Brian, the murder trial for Duane Davis, best known as Keefe D, is coming right up this summer, and his new lawyer wants to get some of the evidence the state plans to use against him tossed as soon as he can. Davis's attorney, Robert Draskovich, wants to clarify, as he did in this 24-page motion to suppress evidence that Metro Police seized in a nighttime search of Davis's home. Davis's lawyer writing the police didn't have good reason to break down Davis's door in the middle of the night. The motion to suppress says the court was misled and that there was bad faith, meaning the judge should toss any evidence the police recovered that night.
Keefe D is making his move right now to get all evidence thrown out in the Tupac case. With a critical hearing coming up next month in January 2026, the man charged with orchestrating one of hip-hop's biggest tragedies could walk free if the judge sides with him.
Hey, Keefe, Metro Police, come over here. Hey, Metro Police, come over here, all right? Thanks, buddy. You have anything on you, sir? All right, sir, go and have a seat right in here. I'm gonna help you out. Yep, just kind of put your butt up against there. Kick that foot up.
Back in December 2024, Duane Keefe D. Davis filed a 24-page motion demanding the court suppress all evidence seized from his home. Hard drives, laptops, his own book, documents, everything prosecutors need to convict him. Now, a year later, with the hearing scheduled for January 2026, this motion is heating up and could destroy the prosecution's entire case.
And now, this motion to suppress, accompanied by 186 pages of supporting documents, including a list of items the cops took from Davis's home after the search, like a USB drive, an iPhone, iPads, laptops, and other tablets. The second page showing the police also grabbed a copy of Vibe magazine on the murder victim, the rapper Tupac Shakur, a copy of the book Compton Street Legends, in which Davis is alleged to have confessed to the murder.
This situation involves Keefe D, the last living suspect in one of hip-hop's most infamous unsolved cases. After nearly 3 decades, law enforcement finally charged him in September 2023. But now his legal team is fighting back hard, claiming the search that produced the evidence was illegal. And with the January 2026 hearing approaching, this case is reaching a critical moment.
I ain't killed nobody, never did ever kill nobody. They don't have no evidence against me. Came and put me in Las Vegas, proved that I orchestrated this.
You said the shots came from the back. Who shot Tupac?
The keeper for the code of the streets. It just came from the back seat, bro. Shouldn't have said nothing. And I'm innocent, man.
This goes way deeper than what you saw on social media. From the moment Las Vegas police raided Keefe D's Henderson home in July 2023 to the motion filed in December 2024 that's now coming to a head in January 2026, this case has had more turns than anyone expected. Here's what actually went down. Let me break down the search, the motion, the legal arguments, and what this hearing next month means for the most watched case in hip-hop history. Let's start from the beginning. To understand this, you gotta know who Keefe D really is in this whole situation.
Right, because Greg Kading also called for the Las Vegas Police Department to arrest you.
He did?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, well, I did a deal with the U.S. attorneys and U.S. attorney, and the dude was from D.C., Justice Department. You know what I'm saying? I was like, you came out here? He like, yeah, I came out here to get you. And it was way bigger time people that was gonna go down with, you know what I'm saying? A lot of people was gonna go down. If I wouldn't have said nothing, everybody, we'd have lost our whole community, lost all my homies, you know what I'm saying? Shit, they shredded the indictment. So I really did a lot of people a favor. They should be thanking me.
Duane Keith Davis, known as Keefe D, is a 62-year-old former member of the Southside Compton Group. Born on June 14, 1963 in Compton, California, he stayed in the shadows for years while speculation swirled about what happened to Tupac on September 7, 1996 in Las Vegas. But Keefe D couldn't stay quiet. Starting around 2008, he began telling his story publicly.
We went to eat. We was eating. They came and said, "You just beat up Lane." We was in the hotel, at the MGM at the restaurant. There was a few New Yorkers though, who was with us. It's like, man, y'all need some help? We got this.
That's what they said?
Keefe appeared on multiple platforms talking about that night. He sat down with Greg Kading for the task force investigation. He gave detailed interviews to DJ Vlad on Vlad TV, breaking down the events leading up to the incident. He published a memoir in 2019 called Compton Street Legend, where he laid out his version of what happened. He even appeared in documentaries and podcasts, each time adding more details about his alleged involvement. Those who followed the case knew Keefe D's name for years before charges came down. Investigators had been aware of him since the late 1990s, but for nearly 27 years, no arrests were made. The case went cold multiple times. Witnesses disappeared or refused to cooperate. Evidence degraded. The trail seemed to have gone completely dark. Here's where things get complicated. According to court documents, Keefe D wasn't just talking to media outlets. He was making admissions that prosecutors would later use against him. In his interviews, he allegedly described being in the white Cadillac that pulled up alongside Tupac's BMW. He claimed to have handed a firearm to someone in the back seat. He detailed the planning that went into the confrontation. But Keefe maintained in these interviews that he wasn't the individual who fired. He positioned himself as a witness and participant in the planning, but not the person who actually carried out the act. That distinction matters legally, but prosecutors saw it differently. They viewed his admissions as evidence that he conspired to commit the act, making him just as responsible under the law. The hip-hop community watched his interviews with mixed reactions. Some people couldn't believe he was openly discussing details of an unsolved case. Others thought he was clout-chasing or embellishing for book sales and interview money. Entertainment outlets like Complex, The Source, and All Hip Hop covered his media appearances, analyzing every claim he made. Now this is when things really popped off. On July 17, 2023, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police executed a search warrant at Keefe D's home in Henderson, Nevada. This wasn't a quick knock and search. According to reports from KTNV and other Las Vegas news outlets, police spent hours at the property, removing boxes of evidence. The choice of location matters here. Henderson is a suburb just outside Las Vegas, about 15 miles from where the original incident occurred on the Strip back in 1996. Keefe had been living there for years, thinking he was safe from prosecution after so much time had passed. According to federal and local court documents, law enforcement had been building a case quietly. They reviewed Keefe's interviews, his book, his documentary appearances. They corroborated details he provided with existing evidence from 1996. They identified inconsistencies in his various tellings of the story. By the time they showed up with that search warrant, they already knew what they needed to prove their case. The timing is significant. July 2023 was nearly 27 years after Tupac's passing. In most jurisdictions, there's no statute of limitations on serious violent offenses, but building a prosecutable case after nearly 3 decades presents massive challenges. Witnesses forget details or pass away. Physical evidence degrades. Standards for what constitutes admissible evidence have changed over the years. What law enforcement seized during that search became the foundation of the case against Keefe D. According to multiple sources, including All Hip Hop and Hot New Hip Hop, police removed computers, hard drives, documents, and personal items. They were looking for anything that could corroborate or contradict Keefe's public statements about his involvement. The warrant itself is now at the center of Keefe's defense strategy. His legal team argues that the search happened late at night, which they claim violated Nevada state law. According to the motion filed in December 2024, as reported by the National Desk and WBLS, the search began after 10 p.m. Nevada law requires search warrants to be executed during daytime hours unless there's specific authorization for nighttime execution. But here's where it gets interesting. The warrant was issued by the Las Vegas Justice Court, not a district court. Keefe's attorneys argue this matters because only district courts can authorize nighttime searches under Nevada Revised Statutes Section 179.035. The Justice Court, they claim, didn't have the authority to approve a search warrant that would be executed after dark. This legal argument is technical but crucial. If the court agrees that the warrant was improperly authorized for nighttime execution, everything seized during that search could be thrown out. That's called the exclusionary rule, a fundamental principle in criminal law that prohibits the use of evidence obtained through illegal searches. 2 months after the search, on September 29, 2023, Keefe D was arrested and charged with 1 count of involvement with intent to promote, further, or assist a criminal street organization in the elimination of Tupac Shakur. The specific charge included a group enhancement because prosecutors allege the act was carried out to benefit the South Side Compton organization. The indictment didn't charge Keefe as the person who fired. Instead, it charged him as the orchestrator who planned and facilitated the incident. Under Nevada law, someone who aids, abets, or facilitates a serious offense can be charged as if they committed the act themselves. Prosecutors argued that Keefe obtained the firearm, identified the target, and coordinated the confrontation, making him criminally responsible. The hip-hop community went into into overdrive when the charges dropped. Twitter and Instagram exploded with reactions from artists, fans, and cultural commentators. Some people expressed shock that charges came down after 27 years. Others pointed out that Keefe D essentially built the case against himself through his interviews and book. The general sentiment was divided between those who wanted accountability and those who questioned why it took so long. Radio stations across the country covered the story extensively. Hot 97 in New York, Power 106 in Los Angeles, and V103 in Atlanta all devoted significant airtime to breaking down the charges. Hip-hop podcasts like Joe Budden's podcast, Drink Champs, and Math Hoffa's My Expert Opinion all discussed the implications. Artists who came up in the 1990s and were familiar with the East Coast-West Coast situation had particularly strong reactions. Some, like Snoop Dogg and other West Coast figures, remained mostly silent publicly. Others in the industry used the moment to reflect on how that era's violence devastated hip-hop culture. Legal experts weighed in immediately. Attorneys who specialize in high-profile cases appeared on Court TV, CNN, and local news stations explaining the charges. Most pointed out the unusual nature of charging someone based heavily on their own public admissions. Some questioned whether Keefe's statements in interviews and his book constituted confessions or were protected as artistic expression. The family of Tupac Shakur, through their representatives, acknowledged the charges but remained cautious about celebrating too early. After nearly 3 decades of waiting, they had seen potential breaks in the case before that led nowhere. According to statements covered by Complex and The Source, family members expressed hope that justice would finally be served but noted the trial was still ahead. The situation escalated quick when Keefe D's defense team started pushing back hard. His attorneys filed motions challenging multiple aspects of the case. They argued that Keefe's statements in interviews were protected speech, that the statute of limitations should apply, and that law enforcement had no new evidence beyond what had been available for years. But that's not even the craziest part. The immediate consequences hit fast. Keefe D was denied bail initially. The court ruled he posed a flight risk and a danger to the community. At 62 years old, facing a potential life sentence, prosecutors argued he had every incentive to run. Within 24 hours of the charges becoming public, media outlets around the world picked up the story. This wasn't just hip-hop news. This was mainstream news. CNN, BBC, The New York Times, and major international outlets all covered the arrest. Tupac's legacy extends far beyond hip-hop, and any development in the case becomes global news. Career and business implications started showing up immediately. Keefe D had been doing interviews and appearances for money. That revenue stream disappeared overnight once he was in custody. His book sales spiked briefly as people wanted to read his account, but publishers and platforms started distancing themselves from promoting content that was now being used as evidence in a criminal trial. The documentary and media companies that featured Keefe in their projects faced scrutiny. Questions arose about whether they had a responsibility to alert law enforcement about his admissions or whether journalistic principles protected those conversations. Media ethics experts debated these issues on platforms like CNN and NPR. Relationship changes happened quick. People who had been associated with Keefe or appeared in projects with him started distancing themselves publicly. Some individuals who had vouched for parts of his story suddenly became reluctant to comment. The streets don't forgive easily, and being connected to someone facing these charges carries consequences. Public perception shifted dramatically. Before the arrest, Keefe D was seen by many as an aging former street figure trying to capitalize on old stories. After the charges, he became the man accused of orchestrating one of hip-hop's most devastating moments. The tone shifted from curiosity about his claims to serious examination of his alleged role. But things got even more complicated. On December 23, 2024, just days after his legal team filed the motion to suppress evidence, Keefe got into a fight at the Clark County Detention Center. According to reports from KTNV and All Hip Hop, surveillance footage captured him and another inmate in what officials described as mutual combat, grappling and throwing punches. Corrections officers used pepper spray to break up the fight. Both men were charged with battery. Keefe's bail for the battery charge was set at $50,000, on top of the $750,000 bail for the case itself. His attorney claimed Keefe was ambushed and acted in self-defense, but prosecutors saw it differently. In April 2025, a jury found Keefe D guilty on 2 counts related to the jailhouse fight, battery by a prisoner, and challenges to fight. According to Complex and All Hip Hop, the conviction came after a short trial where prosecutors presented the surveillance footage and witness testimony. On September 2, 2025, Judge Nadia Krall sentenced him to 16 to 40 months in prison for the fight, with credit for time served. But here's what most people missed in all the headlines. The motion filed back on December 22, 2024 reveals the defense strategy. Now that it's making headlines again in late December 2025, with the hearing set for January 2026, everyone's paying attention. Keefe's legal team isn't just arguing technicalities. They're challenging the entire foundation of how law enforcement built this case. According to reports from Hot New Hip Hop and All Hip Hop, the defense argues that Nevada Revised Statutes Section 179.035 explicitly requires district court authorization for nighttime searches. The statute states that search warrants can only be executed between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. unless a magistrate specifically authorizes nighttime execution based on affidavit evidence that such timing is necessary. The defense claims the Las Vegas Justice Court issued the warrant without this specific nighttime authorization. They argue that Justice Court, being a lower court, doesn't have the authority to override the daytime execution requirement. Only district courts can authorize nighttime searches under the statute. Attorney Robert Draskovich, who joined Keefe's legal team in August 2024, laid out the argument in the 24-page motion. He wrote that when officers obtain nighttime authorization through bad faith, courts agree suppression is appropriate. The motion included an additional 186-page appendix of supporting documents, including a list of items seized during the search. Those items included several laptops, tablets, a USB drive, a copy of an issue of Vibe magazine about Shakur, and Keefe's own book, Compton Street Legend. The defense argues that all of this evidence should be excluded from trial. This legal distinction matters tremendously. If the court agrees with the defense, the exclusionary rule kicks in. Everything seized during that search becomes inadmissible. Computer files, documents, personal items, anything that came from that night would disappear from the prosecution's case. The bigger question is, what happens to the case if the evidence gets thrown out? Prosecutors have Keefe's public statements from interviews and his book, but defense attorneys will argue those statements were given in contexts where Keefe believed he had immunity or couldn't be prosecuted. They might claim the statements were embellished for entertainment value, not literal confessions. Sources close to the legal proceedings, according to WBLS and the National Desk, suggest prosecutors are confident they have enough evidence beyond what was seized to proceed. They point to witness testimony from 1996, ballistic evidence, and corroboration of details Keefe provided that match the physical evidence from the crime scene. Behind-the-scenes information from legal observers suggests this motion is the first of several challenges. Defense teams in high-profile cases typically file multiple motions, testing different aspects of the prosecution's case. Each motion serves two purposes: potentially getting evidence thrown out and forcing prosecutors to reveal their strategy and evidence before trial. In January 2025, Keefe's defense team also filed a motion to dismiss all charges, arguing that the decades-long delay in prosecution violated his constitutional rights. According to WBLS, attorney Carl E.G. Arnold argued that too many witnesses have passed away and critical evidence has been lost. He also pointed to a 2008 proffer agreement with a federal task force claiming Keefe was granted immunity in exchange for cooperating with authorities. On January 21, 2025, Judge Carly Kearney rejected that dismissal motion. According to multiple reports, the judge stated that no proof of the immunity deal existed. The case was upheld and set to move forward. Historical context matters here. The original investigation in 1996 was plagued with problems. Witnesses refused to cooperate with Las Vegas police. The East Coast-West Coast situation made people reluctant to talk. Physical evidence was limited. The investigation essentially stalled within months of the incident. Business and money angles are significant. If Keefe's conviction stands, it could open doors for lawsuits against his estate. Book royalties, interview payments, any money he earned from discussing the case could be subject to claims. Some legal experts suggest victim compensation laws could allow seizure of proceeds from his book and interviews. The power dynamics in this case extend beyond just Keefe D. Las Vegas Metropolitan Police face pressure to close one of their most famous unsolved cases. Prosecutors want the conviction to demonstrate that justice, even delayed, still arrives. The defense needs to protect their client from spending the rest of his life in prison. So that's where we're at with this whole situation. As of late December 2025, the motion to suppress evidence is heating up with the hearing scheduled for January 2026. This is the moment that could change everything. Clark County District Judge Carly Kearney will decide whether the search was improper and whether all that evidence should be thrown out. Keefe D. remains in custody at the Clark County Detention Center. He's been held without bail since his September 2023 arrest. The main trial date is still set for August 10, 2026, but what happens at the January hearing could determine if that trial even happens. According to Complex and The Source, the delays stem from the defense team needing more time to review what they described as voluminous amounts of new evidence. Attorney Robert Draskovich told the court that investigators have uncovered new details in recent months that require extensive review. The prosecution continues building its case. According to sources cited by All Hip Hop, they're interviewing additional witnesses and reviewing all available evidence from 1996. They're preparing for the possibility that some evidence could be excluded and want to ensure they can still prove their case. The big development to watch is the January 2026 hearing on the motion to suppress. That decision will reshape the entire case. If evidence gets thrown out, prosecutors might be forced to offer a plea deal or potentially see the case weaken significantly. Legal experts are calling this the most critical moment in the case since the arrest. Second, watch for how prosecutors respond to the motion. According to sources cited by Fox 5 Vegas and other outlets, they're preparing counter-arguments and reviewing all available evidence from 1996. They're getting ready to fight hard to keep that evidence admissible. Third, the impact on how cold cases get prosecuted. This case represents a new frontier where defendants' own media appearances become primary evidence. If prosecutors succeed, it could encourage more aggressive pursuit of old cases where suspects have made public admissions. The bigger picture here shows how social media and entertainment platforms have changed law enforcement. What you say in interviews, post online, or write in books can absolutely be used against you in court. Keefe D learned this the hard way. This also highlights the complicated relationship between hip-hop culture and the legal system. The code of silence that used to protect individuals has been eroded by the attention economy. People tell their stories for money, fame, and recognition, not realizing they're building cases against themselves. For Keefe D, the road ahead is uncertain. He's facing life in prison if convicted on the charges. At 62 years old, even a reduced sentence would likely mean spending his remaining years behind bars, and he's already serving 16 to 40 months for the jailhouse fight, which will run concurrently with whatever sentence he receives if convicted. His legal team has their work cut out for them, but the motion to suppress evidence represents their best chance at weakening the prosecution's case. If successful, it could force prosecutors to rely primarily on Keefe's own public statements, which the defense will argue were embellished entertainment, not confessions. The case gained renewed attention in December 2025 when 50 Cent's Netflix documentary, Sean Combs' The Reckoning, premiered. According to All Hip Hop, the documentary featured previously unreleased audio of Keefe D discussing the case with Las Vegas prosecutors. The series brought fresh scrutiny to his claims about alleged involvement by other figures in the industry. The hip-hop community continues watching closely. This case represents more than just one person's legal troubles. It's about finally getting answers to questions that have haunted hip-hop for nearly 3 decades. Who was responsible for taking one of the culture's most influential voices? Why did it happen? Could it have been prevented? The lessons from Keefe D's case go beyond just one situation. This is about understanding that what you say publicly matters, that time doesn't necessarily protect you from prosecution, that seeking attention and financial gain from discussing serious matters can have devastating consequences. What makes this case particularly complex is how it intersects entertainment, street culture, and legal accountability. Keefe D positioned himself as a storyteller, someone sharing history. Prosecutors see him as a confessor, someone admitting to serious offenses. The truth probably lies somewhere in between, but it's the jury that will ultimately decide. The Las Vegas community has watched this case unfold with particular interest. The incident happened on their streets during a major event that brought international attention to the city. Closing the case represents justice for the victim, but also closure for a city that's carried this unsolved matter for decades. For those who loved Tupac's music and message, this case represents a chance at accountability. But even if Keefe D is convicted, it won't bring back what was lost. It won't erase the impact that incident had on hip-hop culture. It won't answer all the questions about why the East Coast-West Coast situation got so out of control that it cost lives. The next several months will be critical. The judge's ruling on the suppression motion could determine whether this case goes to trial as planned or whether prosecutors need to reconsider their approach. Defense attorneys will continue filing motions, challenging evidence, and building their case for reasonable doubt. Keefe D's best hope is that the technical legal arguments succeed. If the search was truly improper, if the evidence gets excluded, if his statements are deemed inadmissible, the case could crumble. But that's a lot of ifs, and prosecutors rarely bring charges this high profile unless they're confident in their evidence. The entertainment industry is watching too. Production companies that create true crime content, journalists who conduct interviews with controversial figures, and platforms that host this content all have stakes in how this plays out. If Keefe's statements in and paid interviews become the basis for his conviction, it could change how media companies approach these stories. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think the judge should throw out the evidence based on the nighttime search argument? Does Keefe D deserve prosecution after 27 years, or should there be limits on how long cases can be pursued? What do you think about people telling their stories in interviews and then facing charges based on what they said? Drop all your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one and I want to know where you stand on this. If this breakdown gave you the full story on Keefe D's legal fight and kept it real from start to finish, do me a favor and smash that subscribe button. Hit the notification bell too so you don't miss any updates on this case as it develops. Trust me, with the trial set for August 2026, there's going to be more to this story, and you'll want to be here when the next chapter drops. Share this video with anyone who's been following the Tupac case or anyone who needs to understand what's really happening with Keefe D's defense. The more people who know the full story, the better the conversations we can have about it. And if you want to see more deep dives like this on major hip-hop stories, let me know in the comments what situations you want me to break down next. I'm here to give you the facts without the fluff, and your support keeps this going. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.